Here's the brief news from the world over this week. As Capitol Hill begins to tackle the American Health Care Act, President Donald Trump on Thursday submitted his federal budget proposal for the upcoming fiscal year. As expected, billions in deep cuts are being proposed in several domestic and foreign programs, as defense spending would increase by the same amount. The Environmental Protection Agency took a big hit as the president is seeking to slash a quarter of its budget. State Department spending could also be cut by 1/3. Cuts to the State Department and other foreign aid programs would total more than $20 billion. Other agencies would also see across-the-board cuts, and the United States' financial commitments to the United Nations would be cut in half under Trump's budget. In all, President Trump is proposing that more than $50 billion in discretionary spending be shifted from various programs to defense spending. The president commented on the budget proposal on Wednesday.
We are proposing a budget that will shrink the bloated federal bureaucracy, and I mean bloated, while protecting our national security. You see what we're doing with our military. Bigger, better, stronger than ever before. You see what's happening?
Entitlement programs, including Social Security and Medicare, are not a part of this budget. During his presidential campaign, the president vowed to protect those programs. And President Trump might want to fast-track his plans for education reform. This week, New York State scrapped literacy standards for those trying to become public school teachers. The concern? Too many applicants were failing the test, and disproportionately. They were Black or Hispanic. Leslie Sudak, who served on the task force for examining the state's teacher certification tests, said having a predominantly white workforce really doesn't match our student body. Some critics have claimed the exam was racist, but in 2015, a federal judge ruled that the test was not discriminatory. And as British Prime Minister Theresa May begins the process of withdrawal from the European Union, Scotland could soon vote on independence. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said she'll seek a second independence referendum in light of Brexit. Scots overwhelmingly rejected the referendum to leave the EU, and according to polls, they are not interested in another vote for Scottish independence. May decried the new push by the Scottish National Party, insisting that this is not a moment to play politics or create uncertainty and division.
This will be a defining moment for our whole country as we begin to forge a new relationship with Europe and a new role for ourselves in the world. We will be a strong, self-governing global Britain.
And a new study is projecting that secularism is on a worldwide decline. The culprit? Contraception. According to the Evolutionary Psychological Science Journal, since the 19th century, those who are non-religious have been more likely to use contraception, a trend that continued into the 21st century, according to the study. The more religious a person is, the more likely they are to have more children. As a result, secularism is headed for a demographic winter. The use of contraception is diminishing the representation of secularists in each successive generation. Meanwhile, according to the researchers, the number of religiously minded individuals could continue to grow. We'll see. And according to another study published this week, there is a good reason for having children: longer life. Researchers in Sweden have found that the average life expectancy of 60-year-olds who have children was 2 more years for men and 1.5 years for women, compared to peers with no children. By age 80, fathers and mothers could expect to live about 10% longer, maybe an additional year or more. The study, published in the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health, stopped short of concluding that having children is the cause of the life expectancy gains. It merely pointed out the correlation. And some church news: plans are officially underway for Pope Francis to visit Colombia in September. The announcement was made in Bogota this past week. The Pope will spend nearly a week in the South American nation, arriving in Bogota on September 6th and visiting 3 other cities before returning to Rome on September 11th. The visit, in the works for 2 years, has been delayed by the Colombian peace process. It is the first papal trip to Colombia in over 3 decades. Also in the news this week, Pope Francis says he's willing to consider the question of admitting married men to the priesthood to help alleviate the worldwide shortage of priests, at least in some cases. In a recent interview with a German newspaper, Francis mentioned the possibility of ordaining married men of proven virtue in remote areas of the world where priests are scarce. Initially, however, Francis dismissed the idea of voluntary celibacy, saying that it was not a solution to the shortage of priests. Clerical celibacy is a discipline in the Latin Rite that could be changed by any pope. The possibility of married priests is not new. Both St. John Paul and Benedict XVI broached the subject during their pontificates. When asked if this was the right moment to relax or abolish priestly celibacy, Francis answered that discernment is needed to see what the Holy Spirit desires. We'll keep you posted. And speaking of making changes, it has been found that Pope Francis did not alter the 10 Commandments. Found. Several news organizations, including the Associated Press, went to the trouble of debunking what has become a widely circulated story that Francis lifted prohibitions on adultery and added commandments banning genetic engineering and self-glorification. The original report asserted that Pope Francis made the announcement during his 2015 visit to Ecuador and went so far as to say that the Vatican was having the new set of commandments etched in marble. Vatican spokesman Greg Burke called the story absurd, saying these kinds of stories don't merit any action on our part because they're so far-fetched. Fake news.